Okay, good afternoon. Fuhr Shalem Yehuda Chaim and Esther Sarah Fuhr Shalema. Stephen Bas Rivka Fuhr Shalema and Leila Nishmat Elka Bat Yosef Menachem. Leila Nishmata and also Tzvi Dov Ben Chaim Pesach. Yitzchak Ben Sarah Dvorah Bas Yitzchak. Abraham Ben Mordechai David. Reuven Ben Shmuel. Yeshua Ben Shmuel. Chaim Ben Fega. Mordechai Yitzchak Ben Rivka. Rachel Bas Yosef, Eliezer ben Yaakov, Chaim ben Gedaliah, Zalman Leib ben Moshe, Chaim Eliyahu ben Yosef Moshe, Ami Chai ben Yaakov, Gedaliah ben Tzvi Ruvain, Leila Nishmatam. Today we're going to speak about Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. Why are we calling a month after Babylonian deities? Strange. Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, if you take a look at your sheet, side number 1, if you look in the book of Yechezkel, Tammuz is the name of a Babylonian deity. It's like calling the month J.C. Penney month or a Buddha month. Why would you name a month after a Babylonian idol? Which is very strange. You look in the book of Exodus 23, Pasuk Mishpatim, it says, V'shem Elohim acherim lo taskiru, lo yisham apicha. Exodus 23, it says that you're not allowed to mention the name of what? Of Avodah Zarah. It shouldn't be heard in your mouth. So how does Yechezkel go against Exodus 23? How does Yechezkel mention the name of Avodah Zarah, Tammuz, and we call Tammuz, when Exodus 23 tells us, V'shem Elohim acherim lo taskiru, lo yisham apicha. You're not allowed to mention the name of Avodah Zarah. Yechezkel was an Orthodox rabbi, besides being a prophet, so how could he mention the name Tammuz? That's a foreign deity, and the God says don't mention it. So the Gemara in Sanhedrin 63 asked that question. And the Gemara says, if the name of the deity is in Tanakh, it's kosher. In the Torah itself, you have Baal Peor, you have Molech. So if it's written in Tanakh, then what? The name can be mentioned. So since Tammuz is written in Tanakh, so therefore it can be mentioned like Baal Peor and Molech are written in the Chumash itself. But it's no mitzvah still to call the name after Avodah Zarah. In next week's parsha, the Jewish people worship Baal Peor because of the wild Moabite women. Baal Peor. So how do you name that Getchke? Name that tune, name that Getchke. If it's in Tanakh, you can say it. If it's not in Tanakh, then you should not say the name of the Zarah. So therefore I say J.C. Penney. So Baal Peor, the Jews worship Baal Peor with the wild Moabite women. Very strange how they worship this Getchke, you know? They relieve themselves. Isn't that bizarre? To worship Baal Peor, you had to what? Go to the toilet. So if a guy had diarrhea, he was a big chassid of this Getchke. If he had diarrhea, then the Baal Peor, he was a great chassid. Disgusting. But that's the Avodah Zarah. That's the Yetzer Hara. It can trap a person to do the most disgusting thing. So they wanted to have relations with the Moabite women. So they said, you want to have relations with me, you have to defecate in front of the Baal Peor. But anyway, getting back to our question over here, why name a month? Okay, you can mention the name, it's in Tanakh. But isn't it strange that you will mention the name Chodesh Tov, Chodesh Tammuz, like Chodesh Buddha? And what's the purpose over here? To mention Avodah Zarah, and we name a fast after Tammuz. Maybe that's why we're fasting, Chava. Shivos Tammuz, maybe that's the reason we're fasting when? In 17 days? That we have to name our month after Avodah Zarah. Perhaps that's the reason that we what? Fast. So what's it all about and where is it coming from?
So why don't we change it?
Okay, stay tuned. So now I give you another reason to fast. In 17 days you'll be fasting Shivos Tammuz. Another reason is that we never have to name our month after Avodah Zarah. That should be a reason to fast. So what's it all coming from, and more important, what's the message for us? If you look at side number 1, on the left side it says Rish Lakish. You see that? It's underlined in yellow. Left side Rish Lakish. You have that? Yes? No? Yeah. Rish Lakish. Who was Rish Lakish? He used to be a guy like Meir Lansky, and then he became a real great Baal Tshuva and became the chief rabbi of Tiberias. Rish Lakish, the chief rabbi of Tiberias, Sache b'Yardena. He was taking a bath in the Jordan River. Asa Rabbi Bar Bachana. You following me? Yes? Asa Rabbi Bar Bachana. So a rabbi from Babylon, Long Island, came to visit him, and he saw that this chief rabbi of Tiberias was bathing where? In the Jordan River. Yov le'yoda. So Rabbi Bar Bachana, the visiting rabbi from Babylon, Long Island, extended a hand to Rav Shimon ben Lakish to help him out of the river, the chief rabbi of Tiberias, to give him honor. Omer lei Rish Lakish, the chief rabbi of Tiberias, says to Rabbi Bar Bachana, the chief rabbi of Babylon, Long Island, what does he say to him? Eloha. What does Eloha mean? Eloha. Elokim. He swears by God, Sanein Elocha, I hate you, Babylonians. This is the chief rabbi of Tiberias, speaking to the rabbi of Babylon, Long Island. He says, you want to help me out of the river? Get away from me. I hate you. I hate you, Babylonians. Why? You allowed to hate a Jew? Because, why do I hate you? Lefish and Ishartem beBavel bezman aliyat Ezra. When Ezra brought the Jews back, why didn't you come? Look at footnote 36. It's underlined in yellow, I think. See footnote 36? Rashi? Rashi. Ba'aliyah Rishonah, after Koresh, Cyrus Vance gave his proclamation that the Jews could make Aliyah, only 42,360 Jews came back. You look at Ezra, chapter 2. The vast majority of Jews remained where? In Babylon and Persia. They refused to come up with Ezra. And therefore, Rish Lakish says to Rabbi Bar Bachana, I hate you Babylonians. Why? Because if you would have come back with Ezra, the second temple never would have been destroyed. No Churban, no Holocaust. How does the Gemara know that? The Gemara goes on, Dechsiv, there's a pasuk in Shir Hashirim. Im chaymehi nivna alel tiras kosef. V'im deleti notzer alel luach orez. What does it mean? If, when Ezra gave the call to make Aliyah, you Jews would have come back kachoma, like a mighty wall, you would have come back in droves. Valitem kulchem, and all of you would have what? Come back b'mei Ezra. You wouldn't stay back in Babylon, Long Island. Then Kesef. Then the Beis HaMikdash would have been like silver. Silver is something that doesn't rot. You're finding silver coins from 1,000 years ago. The second temple would have remained. She'ein rokev shalet bo. Rot doesn't attach itself to silver, says Shlomo Melech and Shir Hashirim. And the second temple would have remained. But, if you turn the page over to side number 2, Achshav, what does Achshav mean? Side number 2, there's a yellow there. They call me Melo, yellow. Achshav, now, shalitem kadalotot, you came back like schleppers, dal, in trickles and dribs and drabs. Therefore, you're compared nishaltam ke'erez. There you're compared to wood. Sharokov shoylet boy, that rot will attach itself. And therefore, the second temple was destined to be destroyed from the beginning. Why? Why? Because the Jews didn't come back. If they would have come back, the second temple would have been the final temple. Look at footnote 39 in Rashi. I think it's underlined in yellow. Yes, right side. Rashi, footnote 39. Rabbeinu Yocham perish. If you Yidden would have come back 2,400 years ago under Ezra, you would never have to go to Golus again. I'm reading footnote 39. V'chein mashma b'med b'shir hashirim. Ilu Yisrael helu choma mibavel. The Jewish people would have returned from Babylon under Ezra like a mighty wall. in their hundreds of thousands, in their millions, lo ychorei Beit HaMikdash. The second temple never would have been destroyed. But now that you came back like what? Schleppers, dribs and drab, therefore the second temple was a wooden bungalow. Could have been a marble palace that would have lasted forever. But by not coming back, we caused the Chorban Bayesheni. You hear this? Now, if the Jews would have come back in their millions, the second temple would have never been destroyed, which means that Mashiach would have come when? 2,400 years ago.
Wow.
That means no Chorban and no Holocaust. But no, they decided to remain behind in Babylon, and therefore the second temple was doomed to be destroyed from what? From the beginning. So therefore, who caused the destruction? The Jews refusing to make Aliyah. The Jews refusing to make Aliyah. You hear this? So, why does Ezra call the month Tammuz? In the Torah, there are no names to the month. There's Chodesh HaRishon, Chodesh HaSheni, Chodesh HaShlishi. This month, Tammuz, is what?
Revi.
Chodesh HaRevi. April is not the fourth month. Tammuz, Chodesh HaRevi. Why did Ezra change the system? Why did he attach Babylonian names to the months when the Torah only has Chodesh HaRishon, Chodesh HaSheni, Chodesh HaShlishi? I'll give you the Ramban's explanation, and then I'll give you Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky's explanation. Ramban says, if you look in the Torah, why does the Torah count Nisan Chodesh HaRishon and Iyar Chodesh HaSheni? Chodesh Elechem Rosh Chodashim. The first month, to remind us of the exodus from Egypt. So even though the world was created when? In Tishrei. We don't count Tishrei as the first month. We count Nisan. Says the Ramban, for us, history began with the Exodus. Since the Exodus took place when? In Nisan. Therefore, to remember that miracle, we count Nisan as the first month, and the second month is Iyar, etc. To remind us of what? Of the Exodus from what? From Egypt. From Mitzrayim. But there was also an exodus from Bavel, even though a smaller exodus, only 42,000 Jews came up. Who was the second Moses? Ezra. So just like Moses led the Jews out of Egypt, to commemorate that miracle, says Nachmanides, we count Nisan as the first month, and Iyar as the second. We're dating from the exodus from Egypt. There was another exodus, on a smaller scale, the exodus from Bavel, under Ezra. So we use Babylonian names of the months to remind us that there was a second exodus. Just like God redeemed us from Egypt under Moses, centuries later he redeemed us from Bavel under Ezra. So to remind us that we were also exiles, where in Bavel, Ezra gave Babylonian names to the months to remind us that we were once exiled in Bavel, and Hashem sent Ezra to take us out of there. So that's why we have Babylonian names, but that doesn't explain why you name Avodah Zarah, Tammuz. So Yaakov Kamenetsky explains something incredible. He says, if you look in the Gemara Ksubis, he says as follows. The Gemara says, Chol hadar b'chutz la'aretz, ki'ilu oved avodah zarah. I'm not hallucinating. Look at Tractate Ksubis, page 110. Kol hadar b'chutz la'aretz. I think that includes Lakewood too, doesn't it? Lakewood too. Chol hadar b'chutz la'aretz, ki'ilu oved avodah zarah. It's like you worship avodah zarah. So Yaakov explains, therefore Ezra put a knas, I put a spell on you, to remind us of our eternal shame and stigma. We didn't want to come back. Only 42,000 Jews came back. Millions remained behind. To remind us of our shame, that we could have brought the Messiah 2,400 years ago, but we didn't make Aliyah. So you like Babylon so much, you like to live in Shmutz La'aretz so much, You might as well call your month Avodah Zarah, because anyone who lives in Chutz La'aretz, says the Gemara in Ksubas, page 110, is like he worships Avodah Zarah anyway. Kol Adar b'Chutz La'aretz ki'ilu oved Avodah Zarah, Tractate Ksubas, page 110, side B. L'chein Tammuz shem Avodah Zarah, it's a knas, a reminder. How do you say knas in English? A penalty to remind us of our shame. Ezra said, you guys could have brought the Messiah 2,400 years ago if you would have come back. That means no Holocaust and no terrorism. But you remain behind, you like Chutz La'aretz so much, to remind you of your eternal shame, we are going to call the month after Avodah Zarah, because after all, living in Chutz La'aretz is worshiping Avodah Zarah anyway. Who said this? The great Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, my Rosh Yeshiva. Where did he live, Chava? Chutz La'aretz. So you know what he said? Please hear me. If I get emotional, you'll excuse me. In front of 500 rabbis at a convention in New Jersey, in front of 500 rabbis, my great Rosh Yeshiva, Yaakov got up and he spoke about the importance of living in Israel. And then with tears in his eyes, he says, what about me? Why don't I live in Israel? You know what he said about himself? I long to go to Israel. I would have gone to Israel. But when my first wife died, he was planning to make Aliyah. His first wife died. And by then he was already very ill. And then when he married his second wife, and he wanted to make Aliyah with her, but she was unwilling to leave her children and grandchildren in America. And he said, so what? The halacha is, the great rabbi in front of 500 rabbis, the halacha in Ksubah says, if the husband wants to make Aliyah and the wife does not, divorce her and don't pay the Ksubah. So the great rabbi said, what about me? He says, listen to me. When my first wife passed away, I was so sick, she saved my life. She did hatzalas nefashos. I owe her. And therefore, if she doesn't want to make Aliyah, I cannot leave her. She saved my life. I felt like I was dying when my first wife died. By marrying me, she saved me. I owe her my life, the great rabbi said, and therefore, I have to respect her wishes against halacha. Because the halacha says that what? If hubby wants to make Aliyah and the wife doesn't, or vice versa, what happens? Supposed to get divorced. So the great rabbi said, Pekuach nefesh doiche kol haTorah kula. Yiddish Pesach Chaya. Pekuach nefesh doiche kol haTorah. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, did you know this? Did you know this? Moshe, you didn't. Good thing you came today. With tears in his eyes, in front of 500 rabbis at a convention in New Jersey. He said, Pekuach nefesh doiche kol haTorah kula. She saved my life. Pekuach nefesh. That pushes away the entire Torah, and therefore I have to respect her wishes and not make Aliyah against halacha. Pekuach nefesh doiche kol haTorah kula.
But how many other people have excuses?
This is what the great rabbi said. But anyway, what do we see from here? We see from here that this was a knas that Ezra put, Tammuz. When the Mashiach comes, we're going to go back to the old system, Chanoch. We're not going to call the month Tammuz anymore. We're going to call the month what? Chodesh HaRevi. Bring back the good old days. Yes? Yes? Nachon. That's right. The Rambam Paskins, it's better to live in a city in Israel where you're the only Yid and all Goyim. Better to do that than to live what? In Williamsburg or Borough Park with the city all Yidden. The Holy Rambam said this. So Rabbi Chaim Eliyahu is saying, you're the only Yid in the city. There's no minyan. And your choice is to go back to Borough Park. The Rambam says, no, live in Eretz Yisrael, in a city with all Goyim. You're the only Yid. More important than going to Chutz La'aretz and living in a city all Yidden.
There's no picture for leaving right.
What?
There's no picture for leaving right.
So anyway, it's too bad that Yishuv Eretz Yisrael is not a chumrah. Too bad it's not a chumrah. In Borough Park, they're very medactic with chumras. You know? Too bad that living in Israel is only a mitzvah. And what kind of mitzvah is it? It's shkula mitzvah Yishuv Eretz Yisrael keneged kol mitzvah shebetorah. The Pischei Tshuva says, Afilu b'zman hazeh, the mitzvah of living in Israel is equal to all the mitzvahs of the Torah. And the Pischei Tshuva, Even Ezra, Siman Ayin Hey, everybody follows him. He says, even today, the mitzvah to live in Israel is shokol, how do you say shokol? Is equal in value to all the mitzvahs that are even today. So too bad living in Israel is only a mitzvah. If it was a chumrah, in Borough Park, they keep all the chumras. If it was a chumrah, they all come make aliyah, right, Chava? Let's say it's a chumrah to live in Israel. They follow the chumrah. They wouldn't sit next to a lady on a plane. That they keep, right? They wouldn't sit next to a lady in a plane, right? So that's chumrah they keep. What about living in Eretz Yisrael? Right? It's not only a mitzvah, it's the greatest of all mitzvot. The Pischei Tshuva, Even Ezra, Siman Ayin Hey. That even today, the mitzvah to live in Israel is the greatest of what? Of all mitzvot. So the second temple was destroyed. The second temple was destroyed. It didn't have to be that way. But we know that every cloud has what? A silver lining. Every cloud has a silver lining. So the great Rav Kook says something incredible. The second temple did not have the Shekhinah, didn't have the Kahuna Gedolah, didn't have Malchus Beit. It was lacking a lot of things. Since the Jews didn't come back, it was lacking in many things. There was no ark, there was no tablets, right? There was the Choshen, what's it called? The Urim and Tumim was not plugged in. No Malchus Beit David, right? No ark, no luchot. But Rav Kook says something incredible. He says that in Binyan Bayis Sheni, there was a greater light to the world than Bayit Rishon. Incredible. Bayit Rishon had all the open miracles, all 10 miracles that we saw. That the smoke went straight up, no matter how windy it was, and there never was a fly in the slaughterhouse of the Beis HaMikdash, and many miracles. And Bayis Sheni, says Rav Kook, in Orot, in a way, was more spiritual light for the nations than Bayit Rishon. And therefore, Chagai, God tells Chagai something very strange. Gedaliah kavod habayit hazeh achra min harishon. The glory of the second house that you're building will be greater than the first house. So how could God tell that to Chagai? We know that the second temple was not greater. It was lacking in all of these great miracles. So he says, Rav Kook, biyachas letikon or lagoyim. The second temple period, we were greater light to the nations than the first temple period. Why is that? Why is that? He quotes the Maral because, what do we see? He says in the second temple period, you had more Goyim coming to the Eretz Yisrael than Yidden. It's incredible. The Yidden didn't come, but it was like the eighth wonder of the world. The Bayis Sheni that Herod built, many people came up to it. And many converts were made in Bayit Sheni more than Bayit Rishon. So says Rav Kook. So in every cloud, there's a silver lining. In every tragedy, there is what? Something to be taken from. So the second temple was destroyed. The second temple was destroyed. And the Jewish people went into Golus a second time. And many non-Jews were attracted to Judaism. Much more than what? Than the first temple. Much more than the first temple. So let's say the Jews would have come back under Ezra, and the second temple never would have been destroyed. So what about all those potential converts? So then the second temple would have been forever. Mashiach would have come then, and then the temple would have acted like a spiritual magnet to draw all the Jews here. Didn't have to be that way. But in 17 days, we're going to have Shivos Tammuz, right, Chava? 17 days from today. Why are we fasting? We're fasting for the Chorban Beit HaMikdash, right? But I never saw the Beit HaMikdash. How can I fast for something, Ruti, that I never saw? It was destroyed almost 2,000 years ago. I never saw it. How could I mourn and fast for something I never had? I think it's an honest question, Chava, no? What are we mourning for something that we never had? Did you ever see a Beit HaMikdash? I never did. So why fast for something that we never had? So the explanation is, the Beis HaMikdash is God's house. Imagine if my parent was homeless for 2,000 years. How would I feel? If my parent is homeless because of me for 2,000 years, how would I feel? Pretty lousy. The Beis HaMikdash is God's house. Because of our sins, we made our parent, capital P, homeless. Because of me, my father and mother, Kaviyachal HaKadosh Baruch Hu, has been homeless for 2,000 years. That should make me pretty sad. Without the Beis HaMikdash, God is homeless because of my sins. So if I would get my act together and the Jews would come back from Chutz La'aretz and we do tshuva, God would not be homeless anymore. Yes? That's why we're fasting. And therefore, every person in life has problems. You ever wonder, Chava, there isn't a person in life that he's not lacking something. Even Trump, right? With all of his millions, with his billions, slicha. Every person has something in his life that he's missing. Is that a coinky-dinky? Golda, I don't think so. What's the game plan? So my Rebbe explained, Rav Pam Zatzal. Every person has problems and he has something lacking in his life to remind us that God is also lacking. He's lacking his house. You're lacking, you don't have this, you don't have that, you have this, whatever. Everybody has issues. God says, remember, I also have an issue. I've been homeless for 2,000 years. Do you worry about what I'm lacking, says Hashem? So when you have something lacking in your life that you're missing, that's not complete, it's supposed to remind us that a HaKadosh Baruch Hu has what? What's he lacking? His house. His house. My parent, God, has been homeless for close to 2,000 years. That's pretty incredible. So we fast. Where is the fast found in Tanakh? You look in Zechariah 8. Tzom Haravi. Zechariah chapter 8. Tzom Haravi. The fast of the 4th month. What's the 4th month? Not April. Shivos Tammuz. The Tzom HaChamishi. And the fast of the 5th month. What's that? Av. Tisha B'Av. The Tzom HaShvi. And the fast of the 7th month. When's the 7th month? July? Tishrei. Tzom Gedaliah. The Tzom HaAsiri. And the fast of the 10th month. What is that, October? 10-10. The 10th of Tevet, which is what? Asor B'Tevet. Right? The prophet says, Yeh l'sasan u'l'simcha. Yeh l'sasan u'l'simcha. So God tells Zechariah that all of the 4 fasts, the fast of Shivos Tammuz, the fast of Tisha B'Av, the fast of Tzom Gedaliah, and the fast of Asor B'Tevis, Yeh l'sasan u'l'simcha. That will be days of joy to the world. So, why is it called Revi? Because it's the 4th month. If you count Nisan as the 1st month, Chava, what's the 4th month? Tammuz. Tzom HaChamishi, what is that? Tisha B'Av. That comes the 5th month, counting from Nisan, right? Chodesh Chamishi. Tzom HaShvi, that's Tishrei. The 7th month, that's when Gedaliah was murdered. And what happened? A lot of Jews were murdered. Why do you fast on Tzom Gedaliah for? A lot of Jews were murdered.
Yeah, but this was.
What happened with Gedaliah?
Gedaliah.
Gedaliah was the governor of Judea. After Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the temple, he put Gedaliah as the governor of Judea. And then Gedaliah was assassinated by fellow Jews.
Because he didn't believe Avodah Zarah.
What? He was assassinated by fellow Jews, and then Nebuchadnezzar made Israel Judenrein. So therefore, we commemorate that. When there's no Jews living in Israel, that's a reason to fast. So after Gedaliah was assassinated by fellow Jews, Nebuchadnezzar drove the tiny Jewish yishuv from here, and Israel became Judenrein, and that's why we fast.
Is all the Hebrew names?
What? All of the names, Masha, are Babylonian. Given Av, Elul, Tishrei, they're all Babylon. Look in the book of Ezra. Ezra gave those names, what? As a knas. Because you like Bavel so much, you didn't want to come up with me, so we're going to call the Babylonian names. But in the Torah, it's written Chodesh HaChamishi, Chodesh HaShvi, right? So Chodesh HaShvi is what? Asar B'Tevis, right? That took place for Chodesh Asiri. So therefore, we fast in order to commemorate what? The tragedies. The tragedies. So what does it got to do with fasting? To do tshuva. The Rambam says if you're fasting on Shiva Asar Tammuz or on Tisha B'Av and you don't do tshuva, you're wasting your time. So 17 days from today, it'll be Tuesday, I think, right? You just fast and you don't do tshuva, you're doing nothing. The purpose of the fast, says Rambam, is to what? To do tshuva. To do tshuva, to learn from their mistakes. So why? So just do tshuva. Why do you have to fast for? The purpose of all the fasts, says Rambam, is what? To do tshuva. To get our act together, to stop hating each other, to stop quarreling. So why do you have to fast at all? Just do tshuva and don't fast.
But sad things happened on those.
Yes. Well, we make a mistake, Masha. We think we're fasting for past tragedies.
Right.
The Rambam says no. We're fasting that we don't have a temple today, that we're still besieged today by terrorists. We're not fasting for past sorrows. We can't change the past. We're fasting for present sorrows. If we would do tshuva, we wouldn't have the problems that we have with Abu Mamzer and the Donald putting pressure not to build in our precious land. You know, there's a freeze by the right-wing government, a freeze. So this all tzara is coming because of what? We don't do tshuva. So just do tshuva. Why do you have to fast for? Why is tshuva connected with fasting? Madua v'lama. Why can't you just do tshuva without fasting? The purpose of all the fasts, says Rambam, is to do tshuva. So why can't I do tshuva without fasting? And the Rambam says if you fast and you don't do tshuva, it's like you did nothing. So why not just fast? Why just do tshuva and not fast? So what's the answer? What's the answer? So the simple answer is, it's hard to do tshuva with a salami sandwich in your mouth. I like salami sandwiches. It's hard to do tshuva with a salami sandwich in your mouth, or even a hot dog, right? When you're focused on the smorgasbord, it's hard to concentrate on the soul, right? So when you're fasting, it helps you focus on what? On the godly soul. The godly soul couldn't care less about a hot dog or a falafel. So by not eating, it helps us focus on who I am. I'm not my body. I'm the neshama. The neshama doesn't care about eating and drinking. So it forces me to focus on my godly soul, to get my godly soul together. So by fasting, it's a way to encourage me to do tshuva. Because if I'm eating, I'm focused on what? Chav on the smorgasbord, right? But by fasting, I might as well do tshuva, I have nothing else to do, right? But the Zohar gives a Kabbalistic explanation of what does fasting have to do with tshuva. What was the mother of all sins? The mother of all sins, don't eat that treifa tree. Right, Ray? Welcome back. Don't eat that treifa tree. No? The first mitzvah given to the first human couple was don't eat that treifa tree. That tree is treifa for you. You remember that?
Allowed to eat it.
Don't eat it, it's treifa. So the first law given to man was what? Don't eat. So the first sin that a human being ever committed was eating. So the Zohar says that all sins, I don't want to use original sin, Yiddish Chanok, all sins flow from that first sin. If Adam and Chapa would not have eaten when God says don't eat that tree, no human being would ever do any other sin. So the granddaddy of all sin, or the mother of all sins, Masha, is what? Eating. So therefore, you want to do tshuva? Don't eat. That's the mother of all sins. All other sins that we ever do flows, I don't want to say original sin, from that first sin when God says don't eat that tree. We all have Adam and Chava's DNA, don't we? DNA, divine natural ability. We all have Adam and Chava's DNA. We all have a part of their soul. So we all took a bite. It wasn't an apple. We all took a bite. And therefore, all sin flows from that sin. So therefore, by fasting, you want to do tshuva. You want to do tshuva, you have to be metaken, the granddaddy of all sin, which is what? Eating when God says don't eat. So by fasting, somehow we're metaken the sin of Adam and Chava, when they ate when God said don't eat, and somehow that is what? A tikkun for all other sins. Now, what took place on Shivos Tammuz that we fast? The first thing that took place, Moshe came down the mountain and he broke the luchot. That took place on Shivos Tammuz. How do I know? If you count 40 days, how many days was Professor Chaya, how many days was Moses on the mountain? 40 days, right? When did he go up to the mountain? Shavuos. If you count from Shavuos 40 days, check your calendar. What do you get? Shivos Tammuz. So Moshe went up the mountain on Shavuos to get the Torah after God spoke the Ten Commandments. He remained there 40 days. 40 days from Shavuos is Shivos Tammuz. He came down and he saw what? The Jews worshiping a golden calf. So therefore he what? He broke the luchos. He broke the luchos because the Jews worshiped the golden calf. So that's the first reason that we what? That we fast. And then what else? Another reason why we fast after that? The siege of Jerusalem. When did the Romans besiege the walls of the old city? When was that? Yud Tammuz. Actually, you can see those walls. If you go to the Rova, by the public Sharutim, you see those massive walls. Those walls were breached on Shivos Tammuz. So you imagine, from those walls to the Kotel is about a 5-minute walk, right? 7-minute walk? You know what I'm talking about by the public Sharutim? Those massive walls. Those are the walls that the Romans breached 2,000 years ago. From there, to get to the Temple Mount by walking, how, buddy, 7 minutes, right?
Adjacent to the plaza?
Yeah. So how many, it's a 7-9 minute walk, or less to the Kotel. Shivos Tammuz, they broke through those walls. When did they get to the Temple Mount to burn it? Tisha B'Av. How many weeks is from Shivos Tammuz to Tisha B'Av? 3 weeks. Can you imagine the resistance the Jews put up? It took the mighty Roman 10th Legion, a 5-minute walk, took them 3 weeks to get from breaching of the walls to the Temple Mount. Can you imagine the superhuman resistance the Jewish people put up to stop the Roman Legion? But it was all useless. But 3 weeks later, from those walls, a 5-minute walk to Temple Mount took them 3 weeks. And on Tisha B'Av, the temple was what? The temple was destroyed. But before that, what took place on Tisha B'Av? When the Meraglim came back and the Jews began to cry, that night was what? Tisha B'Av. God says, you're crying for nothing? I'll give you a reason to cry. So therefore, the first temple, the second temple, Beitar, all took place when? Girish Sfarad took place on Tisha B'Av. Gush Katif. Auschwitz began operating on Tisha B'Av. They wanted to kick the Jews out of Gush Katif on Tisha B'Av, but they postponed it by 1 day. So when we cry for nothing, Benjamin Chas v'Sholem, God says, I'll give you reason to cry, yes? World War I began on Tisha B'Av, right? Which led to World War II. What? The Warsaw Ghetto, I think, was destroyed or was besieged on Tisha B'Av. But all tragedies.
The First World War, which led to the Second.
Nachon, the Benjamin just said that. And the Spanish Inquisition, the decree came down when?
Right.
On Tisha B'Av. The Spanish Inquisition, it came down on Tisha B'Av. So what does it prove? We are our worst own enemies. We are our worst own enemies. We are worst own enemies, right? No one could harm us if we were together. If we didn't have machlokas and sinat chinam, we don't have to worry about Abu Mamzer. It's because of an eternal infighting. The internal hatred, Jew against Jew, and even religious Jew against religious Jew. What took place last Sunday? Last Sunday in Barclay Center. Thousands of Jews got together, so-called Haredi Jews got together to rent out a basketball stadium for thousands of dollars. What was the purpose? To slander the IDF and the State of Israel. And they were dressed Haredi. Can you imagine that? Eza Chil Hashem. To rent out a Barclay Center in Brooklyn to slander the holy IDF and the State of Israel. And they're dressed Haredi. And just this week, 3 Haredi soldiers went to daven in Mea She'arim. What happened? They were attacked. They were attacked. Instead of kissing their feet,
I don't think they're concentrating.
they were attacked.
If they throw out 3 religious guys.
3 religious, right? Instead of kissing their feet, the whole Jewish religion, the Sefer HaChinuch, Rabbeinu Bechai say that the whole Jewish religion stands on the principle of Hakarat HaTov. How do you say that in English? Expressing gratitude, appreciation. Instead of kissing the feet of the IDF soldier who protects you and defends you 24/7, who defends you, protects you from terrorists? So instead of what? Cursing them, you should be kissing their feet. But no. Hakaras HaTov is the Ikra Yahadut. And the Chinuch says that Kafu Tov, to be an ingrate, denies Judaism. So you can wear a shtreimel. If you're an ingrate, that's the granddaddy of all sin. Yes? So you want to know why we have to worry about Abu Mamzer? We are worst own enemies. Yes?
In Parshas Toldos, Yaakov Yitzchak Avinu says, "Akol kol shel Yaakov yadam yadam shel Esav."
Nachon.
And the book of it says there are Jews who have kol shel Yaakov and yadam shel Esav. And that sums it up.
Nachon. But if religious Jews can slander the holy IDF and the State of Israel, they're not religious. They're not Haredi.
They just wear the uniform.
Just wear the uniform. The Vilna Gaon says something incredible. He says that people that dress religious and put on pious airs, but don't act with derech eretz, are making the worst Chil Hashem. The worst Chil Hashem. Last week, a Delta flight from New York to Israel was delayed by an hour and a half. What happened? This Haredi guy didn't want to sit next to a woman. So for an hour and a half, he was arguing and abusing the stewardesses. You hear? Because he doesn't want to sit next to a Haredi woman. That's religion. To delay an hour and a half, hundreds of people, and to cause such a chil Hashem. What do you want from the stewardess of Delta Airlines? What kind of religion is that?
Delta?
Delta. Google it. Last Sunday, an hour and a half delay until finally they kicked him off and had to wait to get his luggage off. So it took an hour and a half. Where does it say in halacha you can't sit next to a woman?
Not in public.
Where does it say that? They're making up their own Shulchan Aruch. Where does it say that? It's you should have bought 3 seats. That's right. Abusing the stewardesses, it's crazy. Baruch Hashem, what happened, this 82-year-old Holocaust survivor, she sued El Al. A brach of her head, she sued El Al. What happened? El Al, the stewardess asked her to move because a Haredi guy she's an 82-year-old woman. This young Haredi guy was afraid he's going to get all hot and bothered by sitting next to an 82-year-old woman. So he asked the stewardess to change her seat. She didn't want, but he insisted. There was a delay. She changed her seat. She was humiliated. She sued El Al and she won. Kol HaKavod, right on. Mrs. Rabinowitz.
Now they have a law that
Thanks to her.
They should call it the Rabinowitz Law.
The Rabinowitz Law. Thank 82-year-old Mrs. Rabinowitz, a Holocaust survivor. This Haredi didn't want to sit next to her. What's he afraid of? Take a cold shower. I mean, that's Judaism? Moshe, that's Judaism? Eza chil Hashem. Huh? To fight with the stewardess, fight with the pastor, and that's religion. It's the worst chil Hashem. What do people say? That's a religious Jew? Who needs you? Derech Eretz Kodma LaTorah. They forget that. That before the Torah, if you don't act like a mensch, you don't have midot tovot, who needs your Torah? Yes?
Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, the Godel Adol, said,
Right.
if you object to sitting or standing next to a woman, you should look into yourself and see what you're thinking. It's your Yetzer Hara and your problem, not hers.
That's right. What's with that guy? What? Right?
Moshe Feinstein said,
Moshe Feinstein is not a problem. Not just him. Shlomo Zalman Auerbach.
you sit wherever.
Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, the same thing. Where are they coming up with these? I mean, it's just that what? That their Yetzer Hara is working overtime. So take a cold shower, right? Before you get on the plane.
Maybe they're worried that with turbulence, they're going to end up touching the leg.
82-year-old woman. She touched me. The Wicked Witch of the West. That's what they're worried about. Turbulence. Masha said the Haredi guy is afraid that there's turbulence, the woman will fall into his lap. The 82-year-old woman will fall into his lap. So he won't be able to control himself. What?
And it's against the law.
What's happening? What's happening to Judaism? What's happening to Judaism, Masha? What's happening? Nebuch. Right?
They worry about that.
What?
They worry about that.
They make a woman, this old woman in the number 1 bus, old woman sitting in the front, Haredi guy goes up to her, he's a young guy, you're supposed to sit in the back of the bus. Eza chutzpah? You're speaking to an old woman? Go to the back. You go to the back of the bus. You go to the back of the bus.
Rabbi,
What?
happened to my friend?
Right?
She sued and she won. He hit her, she hit him back.
She should have knocked him out.
She should've. But anyway, she sued.
She sued him.
She sued.
And she won. She sued him. Baruch Hashem. But it gives Yahadut a bad name. It causes such a chil Hashem. If you have no menschlichkeit, you have no right to wear the uniform. What? I think.
But you know what, Rabbi, last week,
Yes.
when I heard about these 3 religious soldiers that went into a shul,
To daven Ma'ariv, and they were accosted.
Wait,
Right?
the people who are praying there, they don't see it. When I daven,
I don't see anybody else. Where did they see the uniform?
They know that they're saying
Or they came from outside.
The problem was from outside, not the...
Oh, not there. They daven with the later minyan.
Because they get organized to go...
Yeah.
And when they're davening and they're saying...
Where's your Korat HaTov? Could you live in this country 5 minutes wasn't for the IDF? Who's protecting you? Who's defending you 24/7 from Abu Mamzer? Kiss their feet. Why curse them? Kiss their feet. Where's your Hakarat HaTov, Danish? Hakarat HaTov. Oh, it's...
They feel, listen, Rabbi,
Yes.
Rabbi said,
The Boston Rebbe.
that's incitement.
the Chabad rabbi
Yes.
said that the IDF soldiers' uniform is equal to...
The Big Day Kahuna.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Rav Kook said it also.
Wait.
It has the Gedusha Big Day Kahuna. Rav Kook said the first time the soldier puts on his uniform, he should make a shechayanu. He's wearing the Big Day Kahuna. And they spit on it, these sickos. But where are the rabbis? Why don't the rabbis, their rabbis, why don't they excommunicate them? The silence is deafening. Chanoch, why don't the rabbis of these lunatics excommunicate them? The silence is deafening. Speak up.
The rabbis.
Cast them out. Why don't you hear anything? That's what hurts me. Why don't their rabbis excommunicate them and cast them out? They don't say anything.
They're afraid of them.
They're afraid of them.
The rabbis think that they get power.
But anyway, Hashem Yazor. So let's try to be more kinder and gentler to ourselves. As the month of Tammuz, we have to what? Prove ourselves. And hopefully if we do that, there'll be it's called the trickle-down theory, Chava. If I improve myself, there'll be a trickle-down theory. Thank you very much.